Join me as I dive deep into the question, is anxiety really a behavior? Let's see if I can unravel this mystery. Anxiety is a term we hear thrown around a lot these days, and honestly, it's no surprise why. It's estimated that nearly 1 in 5 adults in the United States alone experiences some form of anxiety disorder every single year. That's a staggering number. Millions of people grappling with this condition annually, making it one of the most widespread mental health challenges in our modern world. The significance of anxiety reaches far beyond just those who experience it firsthand. It ripples outward, touching the lives of their families, friends, coworkers, and even entire communities. With anxiety playing such a massive role in society, it's more important than ever to dig into what it really is. Is it a behavior we can control or something deeper that defines us in ways we're only beginning to understand? The question of whether anxiety qualifies as a behavior is a tricky one. It's almost like trying to pin down a cloud. Some folks see it strictly as a mental health issue, a clinical condition that needs treatment, while others brush it off as just a personality quirk like being shy or overly cautious. But what does the evidence tell us? Can anxiety be something we learn or unlearn like a habit? Or is it woven into the fabric of who we are, an unchangeable thread in our being? These aren't just abstract questions, they shape how we approach anxiety, how we treat it, and how we support those who live with it every day. So let's roll up our sleeves and dive into this murky territory together. One of the biggest hurdles with anxiety is the stigma that still clings to it like a stubborn shadow. Too often it's framed as a personal failing, something you should just snap out of if you're strong enough. I've heard people say things like, oh, they're just too sensitive, or they need to toughen up. It's frustrating because that perspective misses the mark entirely. Anxiety isn't about weakness or cowardice. It's a complex beast born from a messy mix of factors. We're talking genetics, the environments we grow up in, the experiences that shape us over time. When we start to see anxiety as this multifaceted condition rather than some simple flaw or behavior, it opens the door to more thoughtful, compassionate ways of dealing with it. And trust me, that shift in perspective, it's long overdue. As we wade deeper into the world of anxiety, one thing becomes crystal clear. This isn't a straightforward topic. Anxiety isn't just a fleeting emotion like feeling nervous before a big speech or a single thought you can brush aside. It's a full-body experience, a tidal wave that crashes through your entire system. It messes with your brain chemistry, sending stress hormones like cortisol into overdrive. It can knot up your stomach, make your heart race like you've just run a marathon, or leave you tossing and turning all night. So when we ask, is anxiety a behavior? The answer feels slippery. It's not as simple as saying yes or no, it's more like, well, it depends on how you look at it. And that's what makes this journey so fascinating. The confusion around anxiety, whether it's a mental health condition, a behavior, or something else entirely, can be a real stumbling block. People often wonder, is this just how I'm wired? Did my upbringing make me this way? Or am I overreacting to life's stresses? It's a tangle of questions that can leave you feeling stuck, especially when the advice you get from well-meaning friends or family doesn't quite hit the mark. Just relax, they might say, or don't worry so much. Easier said than done, right? That kind of oversimplified guidance can actually make things worse, piling on frustration when what you really need is understanding. Sorting through this confusion is no small feat, but it's a crucial step toward clarity. Let's tackle some of the misconceptions head-on because they're a big part of why anxiety is so misunderstood. One of the most pervasive myths is that anxiety boils down to bravery or the lack of it. People assume if you're anxious, you're just not courageous enough to face your fears. That's nonsense. Anxiety doesn't care if you're a lionheart or a wallflower. It strikes across the board, hitting people of all personalities and backgrounds. It's not a reflection of your character. It's a condition with roots that run deep. I've known some of the toughest, most resilient people who still wrestle with anxiety daily. It's not about guts. It's about something bigger, something beyond willpower alone. Another misconception that drives me up the wall is the idea that anxiety is just negative thinking, or a bad habit you can break with enough effort. Sure, thought patterns and coping strategies play a role, nobody's denying that. But they're only pieces of a much larger puzzle. Anxiety often stems from a cocktail of factors: your genetic makeup, the way your brain's wired, the traumas you've endured, even the stressors you face day to day. Reducing it to think positive is like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off. It's not that simple, and pretending it is does a disservice to everyone trying to navigate this condition. Now let's talk about what anxiety feels like, because it's not the same for everyone. For some, it's this constant, nagging hum in the background like static on an old radio. It's always there, whispering worries about what might go wrong. For others, it's more explosive panic attacks that hit out of nowhere, leaving you gasping for air, heart pounding, convinced the world's closing in. I've talked to people who describe it as a tightness in their chest that won't let go, or a mind that races so fast they can't keep up. No matter how it shows up, one thing's universal: it's real, it's intense, and it deserves compassion, not judgment. So why is anxiety so darn hard to pin down and treat? For starters, it's a bit like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. It's complicated. Scientists tell us it involves multiple parts of the brain working or sometimes clashing together. There's the amygdala, that little almond-shaped alarm system that screams danger at the slightest trigger. Then you've got the hippocampus, which helps store memories, including the scary ones that fuel anxiety. And don't forget the prefrontal cortex, the part that's supposed to calm everything down but sometimes gets drowned out in the chaos. Throw in genetics, life experiences, and the stress of modern living, and you've got a recipe for a condition that's anything but straightforward. And here's where the behavior question gets really juicy. Anxiety can look like a behavior from the outside. Maybe you avoid crowded places, procrastinate on big tasks, or double-check the locks on your door a dozen times. Some folks develop rituals counting steps, tapping objects to keep the anxiety at bay. Others pull back from friends, retreating into a shell where they feel safe. These actions are visible, tangible, and yeah, they're behaviors in a technical sense. But are they the anxiety itself, or just the ripples it leaves behind? That's the million-dollar question. It's like asking if a cough is the cold or just a symptom of it. Anxiety drives these habits, but the root goes deeper than what we see on the surface. Physically, anxiety doesn't pull any punches either. It's not just in your head, it's in your gut, your lungs, your racing pulse. Ever heard of the fight-or-flight response? That's anxiety's calling card. It floods your body with adrenaline, tenses your muscles, and can even mess with your digestion. Hello, my nervous stomach aches. Over time, it wears you down, raising the risk of stuff like insomnia, heart issues, or chronic pain. So, when we talk about anxiety, we're not just talking about a mindset or a set of quirky habits. We're talking about a whole-body takeover that demands a serious, thoughtful response. So, how do we handle this beast? Step 1. Stop treating it like it's just a behavior you can willpower your way out of. It's not about manning up or getting over it. It's a condition, a real, messy human condition, and it deserves respect. That means leaning into approaches that actually work, like therapy, where you can unpack the thoughts and triggers behind it. Mindfulness helps too, learning to sit with the discomfort instead of fighting it. And don't underestimate self-care. Sleep, exercise, a solid support system. These aren't cures, but they're tools to build a life where anxiety doesn't call all the shots. Science has been a game changer here. Neuroscientists and psychologists have mapped out how anxiety lights up the brain like a fireworks show gone wrong. They've pinpointed neurotransmitters, think serotonin and dopamine, that get out of whack. And they've developed meds to help balance things out. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is another heavy hitter, teaching people to rewire those anxious thought loops. It's not perfect, and it's not one size fits all, but it's progress. Knowing the biology behind anxiety takes it out of the just try harder camp and puts it where it belongs, in the realm of real, treatable conditions. But it's not all about brain scans and pills. The world around us matters too. Toxic workplaces, shaky relationships, financial stress, these can crank anxiety up to 11. On the flip side, strong social bonds and a safe, stable environment can dial it back. Recognizing that anxiety isn't just in your head, but also in your life, is huge. It pushes us to think bigger, about how we support each other, how we build communities that don't just tolerate anxiety, but actively help people thrive despite it. So, what does it mean to say anxiety isn't just a behavior? It's about seeing the full picture. It's a symphony or maybe a cacophony of biology, psychology, and environment, all playing at once. Calling it a behavior is like calling a hurricane windy, it's true, but it misses the scope. Anxiety is a condition that shapes how we act, sure, but it's not defined by those actions alone. It's in our genes, our memories, our racing hearts. And that complexity, it's why we need empathy, not eye rolls when someone's struggling. In essence, anxiety isn't just a behavior. It's a wild, intricate dance of thoughts, feelings, and physical reactions. It's a human experience that demands we listen, learn, and support each other. By embracing that, we can craft better ways to manage it. Therapies that heal, conversations that uplift, and a world that's gentler to those caught in its grip. Join me as I wrap up the key points from this deep dive. Anxiety isn't a simple behavior. It's a rich, layered condition that calls for nuance and kindness. We've got to see it for what it is, a blend of biology, psychology, and life's ups and downs. That perspective fuels better treatments, smarter strategies, and a culture that holds space for everyone touched by it. If anxiety is part of your story or someone you love, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share this with anyone who might need it, and check out my other mental health content for more. Thanks for joining me on this journey. I'll catch you in the next one.